Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million kalpas. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. Now we come to the second sentence of the Heart Sutra. And this part is what I call knowing yourself. The line goes, Sariputra, form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. So it is with feeling, conception, volition, and consciousness. Now, remember the 5 skandhas: form, feeling, conception, volition, and consciousness. These 5 aggregates are a Buddhist system of understanding ourselves, of looking at ourselves. So now we learn about an important quality or characteristics of the 5 skandhas, namely, form is empty. And so it is with feeling. Feeling is empty, and so on. Now, we need to study this more carefully. So, the Heart Sutra expands on this and says, form is not different from emptiness, and emptiness is not different from form. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Now, these 4 parts, 4 phrases, seem to say the same thing. Mathematically, they will be equivalent. So why bother? Why say it 4 times? Well, we'll see that there are nuances. They are indicative of ways of looking at the relationship between form and emptiness that will bring us different insights. So, first of all, Sariputra. Who is Sariputra? Sariputra is a major disciple of the Buddha. He is a major representative of the Shravaka disciples of the Buddha. The Shravaka disciples are those who aim to achieve arhatship. They aim to become arhats, which means that they want to attain liberation from all suffering and never subject to rebirth and suffering from karma anymore. Now that is a great achievement. So when Avalokiteshvara says transcending all suffering, that's how they do it. They transcend all suffering. Now Sariputra is among the Buddha's foremost disciples. Specifically, he is known to be foremost in wisdom. Sariputra and another disciple, Subhuti, are major personalities, major characters in the Prajnaparamita Sutras. You often see them appearing in the Prajnaparamita Sutras, having dialogues with the Buddha and dialogues with each other, in-depth discussions about the nature of Prajnaparamita. And Subhuti is known as, among Buddha's disciples, being foremost in understanding of emptiness. Now, it makes sense that these two disciples figure prominently in the Prajnaparamita Sutras. One is foremost in wisdom, and one is foremost in emptiness. And Prajnaparamita is the wisdom of emptiness. Now, I will not tell a lot of stories about Sariputra. It will be a good exercise for you to look up the literature and find out more about Sariputra. He is a very important disciple of the Buddha. And many times, Buddha would ask Sariputra to give Dharma lectures in place of the Buddha himself. Okay? So now let's move on to look at the next line, form and emptiness. We will spend this segment on the relationship of form and emptiness. And then later on, we'll look at the others, namely feeling, conception, volition, and consciousness. Now, form, what is it? Physical matter. And the representative, the most important kind of physical matter in the Buddhist practice will be your body. So we can first look at our own body as the form that we are talking about, that we are considering. Well, first of all, let us examine our body or our form. Well, what kind of bodies, what kind of forms do we have as bodies? Well, we have the male form, we have the female form, we have the form of a person. Human beings have a specific identifiable forms. So we can know, oh, that's a person, that's not a person, right? So you have the human form. And you'll have animals, all kinds of immense varieties of body forms. Insects, birds, fish, land animals, those that fly, those that walk on the ground, and so on, and so on, and so on. Those very small and very large. And there are certainly other body forms of other living organisms. Now, so we examine our body and we see that, oh, what is this body? This body is comprised of many parts working together, right? So we have head, we have arms, we have hands, we have torso, we have hips, we have legs, we have feet, and we have organs, internal organs, we have blood, we have bones, we have skin, we have muscles, we have tendons, and nerve cells. We have many different kinds of body tissues working together. So is this body a single thing? Well, you can't really say that it is a single thing, is it? It is an aggregate of many smaller forms working together. Now, if we look even closer, and with the help of science, we learn that, well, all the different body parts are indeed formed from smaller elements that biologists call cells. So there are different kinds of cells forming different kinds of body tissues and organs and so on. So we have millions and millions, maybe billions of cells. Now each cell, in turn, is comprised of many even smaller chemical molecules, organic molecules. And again, there are different kinds of molecules, right? They are protein molecules, they are fat molecules, they are blood cells who are comprised of smaller components, different kinds of molecules. And they do different things, they have different functions. Now, if we look even closer, the molecules themselves are comprised of even smaller things that we can call atoms. And even atoms are composed of subatomic particles like neutrons, protons, electrons. And then we can go even further and we realize, oh, there are something called quarks and other even smaller subatomic particles. And then if we go even further, we find out something that we just realized recently called Higgs particles, which are very, very similar to just energy. And so now, by looking into smaller and smaller and smaller scale of our body, in the end we find out what? We don't have one body, we have aggregate of all kinds of physical forms. And these forms somehow is able to work together for some time, like 50 years, 80 years, 100 years. In order to keep this form working, we need to eat, we need to poop, we need to shit, hair, dead skins, and so on. So, that is a basic understanding of this form that we call the body. So far, Shifu have not said anything new. Any modern person already have learned this in high school probably, right? Nothing surprising. But wait, based on only the above information, which almost everybody knows, we come to a very surprising conclusion. And what is that? Let me ask you a question. What is the boundary of your body? Form. Any form. In order to be a form, you should have a boundary, right? Where this is this form, this is this particle, this is this organ, and this is not. This is liver, and that is not liver. That is kidney, and that is blood, and that is bone. That's not liver. So liver, what is a liver? What is not a liver? What is a neutron? What is not a neutron? What is the boundary of your body? Can you answer that? Can you define that? So, clearly perceive the reality of ourselves. That's wisdom. So let's begin with what is most visible. What is most tangible? We can touch it, we can see it. Physical form, the form skandha. Do we know everything about it? No, far from it. Even based on information, knowledge you already learned, every high schooler knows. Who can answer this question? What is the boundary of your body? Where does your body begin? And what is belonging to your body and what is not part of your body? That sounds like a silly question. But with deeper reflection, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You eat. You drink. So before you take that bite and you take that sip of water, that food, that liquid was not part of your body, right? Now once you put in your mouth, is it not part of your body? No, of course not. I can spit it out, right? Okay, fine. Now once you swallow it, is it part of your body? Well, you may say no, because it's in my stomach. My stomach is kind of like a bag, right? It's inside this bag. And then, if you vomit, you might still throw it out. Okay. Now, however, a few hours later, can you still identify where that bite of food or water is? Well, it has become so integrated with your form, your body. Now it becomes almost impossible to figure out where that bite of food is now, right? And we do know that part of that composition is integrated into the organs of your body, the tissues of your body. Eventually it becomes part of your body. And then when you use the restroom, some part of that food, as well as some part of your body, like the dead skins or the toxins, the waste, goes out. So what is the boundary of your body? Does it actually have a definite, exact boundary? Let us look at two circles. One, a closed circle. One, a circle with an opening on top and on bottom. Which circle would you say represents our body better? The closed circle, in which case the inside of the circle and outside of the circle is very clear, very definite. Or the circle with two openings, right? With a little bit of contemplation, everybody would probably agree, yeah, my body is more like that open circle. I have an opening here that I can put things in, and I have an opening down there, well, not just one opening, but that things can go out. But if that open circle is more like your body, then where is the inside and outside? Can you actually draw a definite boundary of the inside of your body and the outside of your body? In fact, even the circle with two openings is not that good a representation. It's more like a dotted circle, isn't it? Imagine a dotted circle. Isn't that more like your body? Except, it's 3D, not 2D. There are many, many openings, many holes, pores in your body. And you do breathe in and out. And things do come out from those pores, right? That's called sweat and other excrement. So we are more like a mesh with no definite inside and outside. Form. How real is form? So that's one way we can examine our body. Now let us then look at the specific 4 phrases. Form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Now, this phrase may be the most famous phrase from the Heart Sutra, and even one of the most famous phrases in Buddhism, in Mahayana Buddhism, anyway. So why state the same thing 4 times? Well, because they're not identical ideas. Shifu has talked about general principles and specific instances. This is an example. Form and emptiness, they are identical. They're the same. That is a general principle. In fact, all 5 skandhas are empty. But then, when we say the 5 skandhas are empty, that is kind of vague. It's too abstract. Let us be more specific so that we can relate to it. Okay, so form, feeling, conception. Feeling is empty. Form is empty. Consciousness is empty. Good, that's better. Now we can contemplate on what does it mean? Form is empty. Feeling is empty. Which we will do, right? We did a little bit already, but we'll go into a little more detail in the following segments. So now let us focus on this one thing, form and emptiness, the one idea, the one concept. Again, form is emptiness. That is a general principle. And the specific instances what we consider will be form is not different from emptiness, and emptiness is not different from form, and so on. And that will help us to go into more specificity, go into more specific consideration of what this even means. Now, the Heart Sutra stops here, and there's no more explanation, so we need to use our own logic, our own thinking, and try to understand what that means. Now, form is something we are familiar with, right? Physical matter, we are familiar with it. So then when we say form is empty, form is not different from emptiness, how can we relate to this? How could that be a truth? How can that be part of our experiences? Well, yeah, it is. It can be part of our experiences. Form is not different from emptiness. Let us look at this picture. This picture, what do you see? It's like a mesh, right? A net. These white strands form a network, form a mesh, and it's curved. What do you think it actually is? If you haven't seen this picture before, you'll be very surprised. This picture is actually an eggshell that is magnified 500 times. Yeah, it is a picture of a real eggshell, magnified. Now, why is this surprising? Because our understanding of eggshell is a solid thing, right? It's a solid shell. And eggs, an egg is inside it. And in the right environment, the egg can develop into a small chick, a living chick. You probably never thought, I certainly did not ever think that there are holes in this eggshell. But now that you see this picture, it certainly makes sense. Yeah, of course. If a chick can develop from the egg, it must be able to breathe, right? So air must be able to go in and out through the eggshell. Otherwise, you'll be a dead, rotten egg pretty soon. So air can go in and out of the eggshell, but liquid should not. If rainwater goes into the egg, that would be not good, right? And then if the egg white, which form part of the nutrient of the future chick, leaks out, that would not be good, right? So you need to have some sort of integrity inside the eggshell. So that beautiful mesh is formed and necessary. These white strands are actually proteins. It's a protein network that is an eggshell. So when we look at the very ordinary things blew up many times, we see a very different thing, don't we? Now, if we were to blow up this picture even more, what would you see? Well, as we know, protein, these protein strands, protein are made up of amino acid. These molecules, specific molecules, and molecules are made of chemical elements, which in turn are made of atoms. And now, wait a minute, atoms. What do atoms look like? Well, we know from physics that an atom is extremely small, but even the size of an atom is very large compared to the nucleus of the atom. We know there's the nucleus of the atom and they are circling electrons, right? So if we were to blow up the atom, 99% of that space, that mass that we call the atom is actually empty because the nucleus is very small. And most of the mass is concentrated into the nucleus, which is comprised of neutrons and protons. Now, that's high school physics. So, the point is, if we were to blow up this eggshell even greater, maybe thousands of, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands times, you will see basically empty space with very little mass here and there. The little mass will be the electron, and the neutron and the proton. But then if we blow out even further, we know there's something called Higgs boson or Higgs field that really is not much of matter anymore. It's practically energy. Well, Einstein said it, E equals mc squared. Mass and energy are interchangeable. So form is not different from emptiness. Now, remember, emptiness is not nothing. Is in terms of form, it's not form anymore. There's no physical matter anymore. When you go further and further, then physical matter, mass, becomes no different, indistinguishable from energy, which has no fixed form. So from this we can see, oh, okay, form is not different from emptiness. Mass is not different from energy, is it? Now, of course, that sounds a little bit nerdy, but let's look at real life. Our body. What happens to our body? Well, we eventually die. And the body decays. And when it decays, this structure, identifiable structure, gradually become not identifiable. It decomposes. And then some becomes gas, some becomes liquid, and some becomes other solids. And they break down, and eventually ashes to ashes, dust to dust, we become integrated into that external form, that the world, right? So form is not different from emptiness. We can also see it this way. That's probably much simpler. Our body decays. Everybody's body decays. A tree, when it dies, the wood, the trunk eventually becomes not visible anymore. It turns into something else. So form is not different from emptiness. That is actually something we can understand, right? And it is part of our reality. It is part of the reality of form. It is part of the reality of our body. What about emptiness is not different from form? Isn't that redundant? No, it helps us see a reversal of that process. What is the reversal of that process? Well, you have all seen a seed and it sprouts into a plant and eventually even becoming a tree, right? Maybe you grew some herbs from a seed. Maybe you sprouted green bean, bean sprouts, which is pretty easy to do. So you see that from a little tiny thing, something can grow into bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, wait a minute. Where does all that mass come from? You have a small seed, like an apple seed. You eat an apple and you see an apple seed. Now it can become a very large apple tree. Where does that mass come from? Where does that physical matter come from? Well, it comes from emptiness. It comes from the energy. It comes from something from the earth, something from the air, something from the sun, and then some chemical magic aggregated into this future tree. So emptiness is not different from form. Now you may say, wait a minute, but it doesn't start from emptiness. It starts from a seed. Well, where does the seed come from? You see, come from another plant, right? A previous plant. Where does that plant come from? And generations and generations and generations, and eventually scientists may say, well, it comes from organic molecules. When Earth was formed, you have organic molecules, and eventually they somehow became organism. Well, maybe there was no apple seed before, but somehow apple seed or apple plant, apple tree come into being. Emptiness is not different from form. Isn't that part of reality? Maybe we haven't thought about it this way. And when you see that apple seed turn into an apple tree, you know that something external become aggregated into that organism. So then, let us recall the previous idea. What is the boundary of your form, of your body? All right. I will stop here and continue in the next segment on form and emptiness. Now let us close our eyes and mentally review what are some of the points Shifu talked about in this segment. We briefly introduced Sariputra, Buddha's disciple who is foremost in what? Now, even though he was foremost in wisdom, apparently he has not achieved perfect wisdom yet, because Avalokiteshvara is teaching Sariputra in the Heart Sutra, right? Okay. Now I encourage you to find out some stories about Sariputra. And then we talked about form and emptiness. We started to talk about it, and then Shifu talked about the boundary of our body. Nobody can define the boundary of their own body. Now, if that's the case, is it still your own body? Does it not overthrow the concept of my body? And then we started to talk about how we can interpret, understand. Form is not different from emptiness. And emptiness is not different from form. So when we see this transformation of matter, we see this transformation into something that is no longer has form or specific form, right? A tree has specific form, my body has specific form, but then it will transform into something that has no visible form anymore. So we just see this transformation both ways. Now what about the next two phrases? Form is emptiness and emptiness is form. We will explore that in the next segment.